Hi there, I'm E, and this is not your father's 2 cents. Inflation, inflation, inflation. It's been a real headache for nearly all of us these past couple of years as we work to recover from the pandemic. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, at the start of the pandemic in early 2020, the U.S. economy lost 23 million jobs, leading the country straight toward a recession. In response, the federal government sharply increased fiscal spending, and the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates to near zero, keeping them there for almost 2 years. Now, this caused inflation to rise to its highest level in more than 40 years. Fast forward to 2024, and inflation is cooling, but high prices are still putting pressure on Americans' wallets. According to a Wealth Watch survey by New York Life, 61% of Americans report spending more on groceries and dining out compared to a year ago. To give you a bit more perspective, New York Life found costs in those categories rose more than $209 per month on average. 56% of adults said they now spend an average of $161 a month on utilities, and 48% have said rent costs them an average of $302.94 a month. That's how much it's increased. As more households work to cover these increasing costs, some are using credit cards to make ends meet, pushing them even further into debt. According to a report from CNBC, credit card debt rose from $820 billion in quarter one of 2018 to $1.12 trillion in quarter one of 2024. That data is just downright concerning and could lead many families towards a financial catastrophe. So what can Americans do now to take back control of their finances? Joining me today is Kelsey Simasko of Simasko Law in Metro Detroit, Michigan. She's an associate attorney specializing in elder law and wealth preservation. Hi, Kelsey.
Hi, E. It's good to be here.
Yes, it's good to have you. Thank you so much for sitting with me today.
Yeah, thank you.
So we've been hearing about inflation for what seems like 10 years at this point.
Yeah.
What have you encountered people, whether it be in your work life or even in your personal life, who are really struggling with inflation? And if so, what advice would you give them?
I mean, absolutely. I think everyone right now is definitely feeling the effects of inflation. You know, it's not just my clients, it's, my family, it's my friends. Honestly, I myself am even feeling the effects of inflation right now. I think those, though, who are really feeling the effects most are those people on a fixed income. And these people are usually elderly, they're disabled, and they're, just those individuals who can't just go out and make more money to keep up with inflation, right? They have, barriers to them that make it so they, maybe can't work, or they're collecting Social Security, right? Mm-hmm. And to these people, I always say, really just keep plugging along as fast as you can. Obviously there are a lot of things outside of our control right now, but some things I like to say is, shop smarter, plan ahead, and I always say double check all of your bills that are being paid by insurance, just to double check that you're not paying too much for medical services, right? You could even call your internet, your phone, your cable provider, and see if they would offer you some kind of discount for being a loyal customer. Honestly, I know every couple of years my mom is in the habit of doing that. She calls them and threatens to quit, and they usually give her a pretty good discount. And so, that could be a great tool right now. A strategy that honestly I'm really using is a lot of stores have really great points programs, right? So, Kroger, for example, they offer grocery shopping points and you can use them at the pump, right? I buy all my groceries at Kroger, and then I try to get gas at Kroger whenever I can, because my grocery expense is something that, it's just not really going to go away. It might decrease, but everyone has to always be buying food, and gas.
Right.
And so that's kind of a way where, I'm able to help myself by not really changing a ton of my habits. So the number one thing I really say to people, though, is just be smart about everything. If you want to save money on gas, you shouldn't be driving 30 miles to go fill up at like a Kroger or a Costco, because those couple cent savings, it's just not going to make up for the 30 miles you had to drive there and back, right? Instead, it might be more cost effective to just go to the mobile station down the street that you're paying maybe a few more cents, but you don't have to drive as far.
Yeah.
I also say to do some extra planning whenever you're going to go grocery shopping and stuff like that, right? Make sure you're not buying things that you don't need. Make sure you're doing a little bit of meal planning so you can see if, you can use ingredients a couple times in the same week. Or, and this is another strategy that I use because I am very guilty of buying unintended things when I go shopping, right? I go in for milk and I leave with, I leave with things I didn't even know I needed. It just looked so good, right?
Right.
And so honestly, one way that I have been really reining myself in is I do a lot of my grocery shopping online. And so I have my list. I only am buying the things that I need to buy because I'm not having to walk up and down the aisles to see all of the packaging. And then I just show up to the store, they put it in my car for free, and it's all good, All of a sudden, I saved myself $70 because I didn't buy things that I just didn't need, right?
Right.
And so really, that really is it. Just be smart, but also recognize that you got to just do the best you can.
Yeah, yeah. I really like what you said earlier about, how challenging this can be for people on fixed incomes. My dad has been on a fixed income for about 15 years now. And I know it's put like a lot of stress on him. Like I think he just feels stuck. Like he doesn't know what to do or like what he can do to make more money. And my mom actually ended up picking up like a part-time job to kind of help them out a little bit. So what would do you have any advice maybe for people who are in that situation?
For people in that situation, I guess my advice really is just, again, continue to do the best you can. Because unfortunately, for him, so many things are outside of his control, right? A lot of times when you're on disability, there are parameters that say, you can still have a little part-time job, but your income isn't allowed to rise above a certain amount.
Right. Which is, I think, the issue they're coming into, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And so it's hard because a lot of these benefits put people in between a rock and a hard place where, the benefits, they're definitely doing as much as they can. Every year you're getting a little increase for, to account for inflation, but a lot of times it's just not enough. Right. I always say that like the price of eggs, the price of milk, that's usually a pretty good marker because it doesn't matter who you are. You probably are eating eggs and milk to live. Right. Right. And so for those people, sometimes there's just not a good solution. The solution is just, do the best you can, save wherever you can. And, honestly, not to get into politics, but we're in an election year right now.
Right.
And so if you're someone who's really feeling the effects of inflation, you're really feeling the effects of the way that, kind of Social Security disability ties your hands, go vote.
Right.
Tell your representatives that this is a big problem and that, you're not the only one in between this rock and hard place. Your friends are there. Your family members are there. And, obviously getting into debt is something that no one wants to do, right? No one wakes up in the morning and says, wow, I'm excited to put $10,000 on my credit card today that I'm never going to be able to pay back. Right. But when you're in the position between surviving and maybe going into a little bit of debt, unfortunately, some people just have no option but to go into the debt. Again, if you can get a part-time job, if you can get some gig employment, that is obviously best.
One thing I was going to say kind of when you were talking about like shopping smarter, when you brought up like everyone needing eggs and milk, this just kind of flashed in my head. But my mom has actually made some pretty good friends where she works now. And we live out in the country. So she has made some friends, and like what they kind of do is they all swap like produce and eggs. Yeah. Like one friend has like a bunch of chickens. So she'll bring us eggs like once a week or once every 2 weeks. So that's like an expense that my parents can cut out when they run to the store.
Yeah.
Or, I know gardening is like my mom loves it and it's a huge thing for everybody, but she has some friends that she works with where someone will bring in zucchini and someone will bring in fruit. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about, but kind of like
but using your village, using the community that you built for yourself. And, I'm really glad you brought that up because one thing, and this is something that honestly I try to do in my own life, right? Stores like Costco, for example, they have their loss leaders, right? You go in and they're going to have the cheapest price for chicken and beef and meat and, sometimes milk, right? Usually for especially people, older people who are on fixed incomes, it's usually just them and their spouse or just them, right? So it doesn't make a ton of sense to go to Costco and buy the pack of, 30 chicken breasts for $1.20 a piece. But if you have, a group of 3 or 4 people who you're really close with, say, all right, guys, this is what we're going in on together. We're all going to Costco and we're going to, get 2 giant packs of chicken and split it up between the 4 of us, right? Throw it in your freezer. And so really, kind of turning to that village that you have and seeing, what do I have that they need? What do they have that I need? And how can we make this work for, ourselves?
Right.
Luckily right now, when we're recording this, we're in summer. And so, having gardens and farm stands and, neighbors with chickens, it is really helpful because things are producing right now.
Right.
One thing to just kind of keep in mind, though, especially with, resources like that, once we get to the end of the season, it's all going to start to slow down a little bit. And so, it might not even be a bad idea to say, all right, let's plant a couple extra plants this fall so that we could, can some stuff to keep us through the winter, right?
Freeze some things,
it's funny because whenever inflation gets pretty bad like this, I feel like we all really kind of turn towards our 1700s rural roots where we have our gardens, we have, the clothes maker down the street. Like we're turning to our friends to try to kind of give us this break that frankly, a lot of the big companies just won't give us, right? Our friends are willing to give us exit costs, but Kroger's not willing to give us exit costs. And so if that's available to you, I say ride that all the way to the bank.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think, really, it just makes sense. But I think we've gotten so, individualistic in, the way that we operate in our society to where, one, people are ashamed to ask for help, or 2, it's just you kind of just worry about yourself and your family, and that's really all you have time for. So I think, like you said, using that, building that village around you, I think that even comes in handy when it comes to, rent. Because speaking from personal experience, I lived in Florida in 2020. I think I lived there from 2020 to 2021, and I moved back here at the end of 2021. And I looked at my apartment complex a couple months later because I still had some friends down there who were talking about how much rent was going up. And I signed my lease in 2020 for $1,066, and when I looked at it again in 2022, it went up to $1,700 a month. Which was insane to me. And that's why, as an elder law attorney, we always say to people that the number one thing you need to be able to retire is typically a paid off place to live, right? You don't have to worry about the rising cost of housing if you own your home and you've owned it for years, right? You don't have to worry about rising interest rates if you got locked into that 3% interest rate, back in the early 2000s. But unfortunately, for some people, it's just not an option. Right.
And it costs, it costs more to live as a single person than it does to live as a couple.
Yes.
And so, unfortunately, we have seen a little bit of a rise of, our single retired clients kind of moving in with their friends, right? You have 2 ladies whose husbands both passed, and they decide that they're, going to go Golden Girl style, and they're going to move in together. And that ends up saving them a ton of money because all of a sudden you go from having to each spend all of this money on your own apartment and your own food and your own utilities and your own car. You can really downsize. And now 2 people are sharing that apartment, right? 2 people are sharing the grocery bill and sharing the utilities.
Right.
And so it does kind of help lighten that load. But one of the challenging things about it, and I think it, is kind of our society is unique with it, that we are very me-centric, right? We're seeing a little decline in people having these bigger villages around them. And so, for people, especially people who are getting older, your village is more important now than ever, right? Your village is really important 2 times in your life. When you have little kids, right, you need help raising your little kids. And as you get older, you need people who are going to be able to help you out and be able to, do your grocery shopping if you're sick or hurt and help you out if, you need some money to, pay for your groceries or, be able to say, hey, Mom, I planted my garden this year and I have 1 million zucchinis. Will you take half of them?
Yeah.
Right. And just, be nice to each other. We're all struggling. Even those who don't seem like they're struggling with inflation, we're all feeling the effects of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Even like talking like you were saying about, getting a roommate or a friend or even moving back home. That was something that I had to do. Actually, it's been almost a year now, but I ended up moving back in with my parents because my rent was going up like a couple $100, when it was time to re-sign. And I was already splitting like that cost between two checks. Like one check wouldn't even cover it. It was getting to that point, which I've switched jobs, thankfully. But it was so stressful during that time. And initially I was like, gosh, I don't want to move back home. And of course I have a little bit of a longer drive and stuff. But I think in times like this, it's important to kind of put that pride aside and do what's best for you financially,
Yeah, absolutely. And, honestly, right after I got done with law school, I moved back home with my parents because cost just didn't make sense. I didn't have the money to move out and live on my own. And one thing that I really realized, especially as our parents start to get older, as much as they're helping us out by letting us move in, we're really helping them out.
Right.
They've got an extra set of eyes and ears around the house. They've got an extra person to be able to do some shopping, to be able to, make some meals. And, right now I have a family member where her son just recently moved in with her, right? And, the son had kind of framed it as, well, my mom's helping me out, well, she's doing me this favor. And as I talked to the mom about it, the mom said, oh my gosh, he saved me by moving in here. I wouldn't have been able to stay here by myself. It's too much. There's too much work. It's too much cleaning. It's too expensive. And now I, get the chance of having my baby back home.
Right.
And he gets to take care of me just as much as I'm taking care of him. And, from the kid's point of view, sometimes it is really nice kind of getting that chance to kind of give back to our parents a little bit. Honestly, there aren't a ton of opportunities that come up where you get to help them out before they need full-time care, before they're really sick, before they're really hurt.
Yeah.
And so, kind of recognize that as, much as you have to put your pride aside to, move back home or move in with someone else, you're doing them a favor just as much as they're doing you a favor.
Right.
And we all could use companionship. No one likes coming home to an empty house at the end of the day. And it's just a chance to kind of get to reconnect with them as adults, while also saying, hey, we're going through this challenging time. We're getting through it together. And hopefully when we get to the other side of this, we'll all be better for it. We'll all be closer for it. And hopefully we'll all gotten to save a little bit of money so that we could do something that we want to do with it now.
Right.
Instead of just buying groceries and gas.
Yeah. And just living check to check, which is, I mean, that was like the situation that I was in. And it's funny that you bring up like kind of finding the positive in it, like using this as an opportunity to spend that extra time with your parents and give back to them. It's funny because whenever I'm complaining, the biggest thing for me is my drive because my parents live, they live about, maybe a little over an hour from Detroit. So like the drive is really like my only complaint, but it's nice because I know that like I'm spending this precious time with them that I won't have forever. Like I don't have kids and I don't live out of the state right now. So I'm very fortunate that they're there, that I can go home to them and spend time with them. My boyfriend always is like, you're spending precious time with them, that you won't have someday. Like maybe focus on that. And when the days get hard of dealing with the drive or, if you feel like you don't have any privacy or also even like societal pressures. Like I'll be 28 in a couple of months, but I always find myself comparing myself to what other people are doing or where my parents were at that age. And it's just, one, it's not helpful, but two, I don't even think we live in an economic environment that was what it was when our parents were kind of like our age, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And, I have a really good friend who, him and his brother both, the goal was we're going to live at home until we have enough money to buy a house and move out, right? The brother buys a house, moves out, and now my friend has just left.
Right.
And he made it probably a couple weeks, and then he moved out. He got his own apartment. And if I'm being honest, he lived in that apartment for probably 3 months. And then he called me and he said, I hate it here. I hate it here. And it was really funny because he realized, he was like, it's not that I was so miserable living with them. It's that I let everyone else's voice get inside my head. And it made me realize that I felt like I had to prove something. And so I left. But he was like, I'm looking back now, and he's like, I miss coming home and seeing my mom. I miss sitting at dinner and talking with my dad about our day. I miss having this one-on-one time with my parents that I never got as a little kid because I always had my older brother there. Right. They were always concerned about him.
Right.
And, you know, right when he was going through that, I had just moved out and gotten my own place, you know, after law school. And I really took a look around and I realized, oh my gosh, he's exactly right. I really miss them.
Yeah.
I really miss them. I miss, you know, hearing my mom's opinions on things. You know, I don't miss hearing them all the time,
right.
But I miss hearing, you know, them when they were great. I miss hearing my dad yell at the TV. I loved when he would watch scary movies downstairs and I would be able to hear him from up in my bedroom. I thought it was just the funniest thing ever. And now I'm kind of kicking myself. I'm like, I spent all of that time focused on getting out, focused on how I didn't want to be the person living with my parents, focused on how everyone else was perceiving me, instead of realizing, all right, I've got a little bit of money in the bank. I'm pretty happy. I, you know, am really close with my parents, and I'm one of the very few people in this world who can really say, you know, I made the most of my adult time with my mom and dad.
Right.
And being an elder law attorney, you know, I am meeting with people every single day whose parents are sick, whose parents are passing away. And while you're in that mode of, you know, living with your parents, helping your parents, seeing them all the time, it definitely gets taxing. I'm not going to lie. It can get taxing. But the outside of it is so undescribably wonderful.
Yes.
Because you finally get to meet these people who you never got to know as actual people. You only got to know them as mom and dad.
Right.
And then you find out that they're actually really funny. Yeah. And they tell some kind of raunchy jokes. And like, sometimes they say stuff that's really inappropriate. And you have to yell at them. And you realize like, oh my gosh, they're just people. And so it really has made it easier for me as they get older. I'm able to recognize, well, you know, mom's just a person. Dad's just a person. They're going to make mistakes and I can't hold it against them. Because look at how they helped me figure it out, right? They're just still trying to figure it out too.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny you say that because I saw this meme online a couple of weeks ago that was saying like, you realize it's hard to like remember that your parents are also living life for the first time too.
Yes.
Like it's so easy to go
I saw the same one.
And I always think of that. Because I think it's so easy to be like, because they, you know, they obviously they're like your first teachers and they're guiding you through life and teaching you everything that you kind of know as you're going along. Mm-hmm. But it's in the midst of all that, you forget that like they're going through this for the first time too. Like it's their first time being a parent. It's their first time, you know, kind of navigating all of it. So I think, it's funny that you mentioned that because I saw that and it just really makes you think.
And it's go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're okay. So I think, like, I also think trying to find, like, the positives in hard financial times like this is important because not that, like, obviously we would all rather live comfortably than not, but when this is happening, I think it's helpful to, like, lean on your tribe and also kind of try to find the positives in it, which can kind of make going through it a little bit easier.
Yeah. And really knowing that, you know, what's that thing where it's like, what is it? Calm seas never made a good sailor.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't create really strong, lasting relationships with people just by going through the good times. Right? It's like how, you know, you get done with high school and college and you realize like, all right, some of the friends who I thought were really good friends weren't actually great friends because we only partied together. You know, it was all superficial. But these hard times can really kind of suss out who you can rely on, you know, who you can lean on. And as frustrating as it is that we have to be in a situation where we have to learn those lessons, We have to lean on, our friends and our families. I think that it's really helpful in assisting relationships develop into the next step of what they need to be.
Right.
Especially with, parents and children, grandparents and grandchildren, hard times where you get to step up and help your parents a little bit. It makes it so if something really hits the fan later on, they've been able to see, well, in smaller crises, you're able to handle it.
Right.
And so when the big stuff happens, they're hopefully going to be a little more willing to let you help out and to let you handle it and to let you, do what needs to be done instead of still trying to hold on so tight.
Right. Exactly. I agree. So how long, I know it's hard to say, but how long do you think we're going to kind of be living in this time of inflation? I know it's cooling. Like I was reading a Fortune report that I think in like mid 2022, inflation was at like 9% and now it's down to around 3%. What do you see kind of happening as we continue to go along?
I think that since inflation is starting to cool, it would follow that the Federal Reserve will probably lower interest rates to try to get people, spending again. I'm anticipating that rates will drop anywhere from 0.5 point to maybe a full point by the end of the year. Obviously, I, like everyone else, am crossing my fingers that tomorrow I'll wake up and go on the Wall Street Journal and the headline will be, it's over, things are back to normal.
Right?
Prices are down. You can buy a house for not $1 million anymore. Unfortunately, not only having to worry about inflation, we have to worry about some other markets too. And so while, inflation is cooling, while, interest rates are lowering, we're still living in a really hot housing market. Right. And so that's always going to be a challenge. I think right now, especially with prices of things, people are still trying to kind of suss out, well, what is inflation and what is, borderline corporate greed, right? Where is that equilibrium going to be? I'm hoping that within the next year, things will definitely even itself out. Things will go back to a little bit how they, kind of were before all of this started happening. But unfortunately, we just don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Do you
think like the election is going to play into this at all?
So it's funny because I was just watching a press conference from the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And in this press conference, he was really trying to hammer home the idea that interest rates are supposed to be insulated from politics, right? Mm-hmm. That the election has nothing to do with what the Federal Reserve is doing, that, global politics have nothing to do with what they're doing. They're only focused on the economy.
Right.
Honestly, I think it's a really nice idea that, those things are going to be insulated from politics. But as we've seen, the stock market isn't insulated from politics. The housing market isn't insulated from politics. Food prices, gas prices, those are insulated from politics. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the election impacted it, but I also am crossing my fingers that, the chairman was telling the truth and he's not going to, take any of that into account.
Right. Right. Yeah. Hopefully not.
Yeah. And, it's so funny though, because in the last 2 weeks, as we're filming this, Joe Biden dropped out of the race. There was the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. The last 2 weeks have shown us literally anything can happen.
Yeah.
In a 24-hour news cycle, right?
Yes.
I'm hoping that the craziest things that have happened are already done. I'm hoping it doesn't get any wilder than this because personally, I don't think I could take it.
Yep.
But that being said, we just never know.
No.
We don't know what's going to happen next. We just can't be sure. And so this is what I like to say to people. Cross your fingers and hope for the best, but plan for things to stay the same or even things to get a little bit worse. Because if you're planning for worst case scenario, you're going to be very pleasantly surprised when that doesn't happen. And usually the worst case scenario doesn't happen, but I'd rather everyone have that little extra buffer zone and say, wow, I'm glad I never had to use this. I'll go and put this in my savings account. then think, well, I was really anticipating, rates going down, but now something crazy happened and they went up, right?
Right.
And so it's hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and cross your fingers.
Right, because we're all doing this for the first time together.
Yep. We are all doing this for the first time together. And I think all of us are looking around and saying, it's almost done, right?
Right.
Right? This is it, right? It has to be it.
Right. I saw this other meme online, too, that was like, millennials are sick of living through the 100th, historical event in their lifetime. Or there was another one that was
all of these,
when will the times be precedented? I'm sick of
I am dying for the times to be precedented. I am dying for it. And it's funny because I feel like every time we get through a hurdle, the next one just comes at us and we realize, oh my gosh, the last one maybe wasn't that bad.
Right.
And so, I try not to be a doomsday or worst case scenario person, but I also have pretty bad anxiety.
Yeah.
And so mentally, I'm preparing for everything to just go to hell in a handbasket so that if things turn out pretty good, I can say, wow, I'm the crazy one.
Right.
I would like to be the crazy one for a time instead of looking around and saying, is this a joke?
Yeah.
Are we in the bad place?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So kind of like in your field, I wanted to ask too, how has inflation impacted? I know we talked about people on fixed incomes, but maybe other clients that you have, like people who might be retiring in the next 10 years, or how has these past couple of years impacted them?
So honestly, the past couple of years has been huge for people who are thinking about retiring because they're kind of realizing how volatile things are and how they're about to get to a point where things are going to look a lot different, right? Before you're getting to the point where you're thinking about retiring, inflation matters, but, people like you and I, we have the benefit of we're paying higher prices now, but we have time. Right. We have time to make it up. We have time to make more money. We have time for the stock market to grow our assets to kind of make up for this little bit of time, right? We've got 20, 30 years.
Right.
For people who are about to retire within the next, 5 years, they're kind of realizing that their assets aren't going to be growing like they have been, right? They're still going to be making some growth, right? They're still going to be, their money's still going to be working for them, but they're not getting any more paychecks. They're not getting any more big bonuses that are really going to pad that account. And so in the last couple of years, it's been really funny because 75% of my clients are not feeling the effects of inflation nearly as much as they could be. And it's because before this all happened, they kind of realized we want to do whatever we need to do to protect our assets so that we don't have to worry about inflation going crazy. We don't have to worry about, the stock market crashing, or we don't have to worry about interest rates going sky high.
Right.
And so for some people, they're feeling fine. They're coming in and saying, my assets look great. I'm happy. I'm so glad I came and I did this before I needed to, right?
Yeah.
The flip of that, though, is the other people who say, oh my God, why didn't I listen? Why didn't I come in and protect everything? Why did I say that I was fine with rolling the dice? Because the problem is once you retire, you start pulling money out of your IRA, your 401k, and these bigger accounts that you have not been touching all of these years, right?
Mm-hmm.
If this money is in an account that's going up and down because of the stock market, you've got to be really, really careful, because if you're taking money out of the account and the stock market is down and prices are higher because of inflation, you're drawing a ton of money out of that account.
Right.
And the stock market has to go bonanza to make all that back up for you, right? And usually the only thing that is predictable about the stock market is its unpredictability.
Exactly.
And the fact that, you can't bank on the fact that the stock market's going to make your money back unless you have 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, all of this time. And so when you no longer have the benefit of the stock market taking care of your problems with the amount of time you have to start taking some really, really active steps to make sure that your investments aren't getting any lower than they absolutely need to.
Yes.
One thing that we're really finding right now, and it's really, really scaring us as practitioners, is it's getting more and more common for people to outlive their money, right?
Yeah, with life expectancy, being longer now.
And by the time you outlive your money, that's when you need usually some heavy duty care, right? You need assisted living, you need nursing home, you need adult foster home, you need full-time care, and you don't have the assets for it. And so it's really, really, really important. And I'm not just saying this because, I am a wealth preservation specialist. I'm not just saying this because I am an elder law attorney. I'm telling you the exact same thing that I tell my parents, my grandparents, my in-laws, and my friends.
Right.
You need to take active steps to protect your investments from the stock market. All right? Protecting it from the stock market can also help you protect from inflation. There are investments where you can still share in the growth. We absolutely want your money working for you. I never want someone's money to be sitting in, a checking account making 0.03% interest. But you need to be so careful of the downside, because if your investment fails, if you have to spend too much money, if inflation is driving you crazy, and now you're having to draw so much from these accounts, you're just making it more likely that you're going to outlive your money. And that's something we never want to see anyone do.
Right. Because then you're forced to have to go back to work, or, it just puts you in a pinch at a time when you probably really don't want to be in one. You're getting older.
Exactly.
You're cognitively maybe not where you were. It's just your body probably can't even handle the kind of physical and mental stress that comes with, oh my God, I don't have enough money, I'm not stable. That's just that's the last thing I feel like you want to worry about in that phase of your life.
And if something as easy as switching up your investments could be the difference between outliving your money and not, why would you not want to give yourself that fighting chance, right? You don't have to do it with me. You could do it with someone else, anyone who would be able to, show you that they have a track record, right? The most important thing right now, especially when looking for some kind of financial advisor to help you through this, is you need someone who has a proven track record. Right now, I've seen a lot of financial advisors throwing around that they're fiduciaries, right? Mm-hmm. I'm your fiduciary. Being a fiduciary, it's important, but it doesn't mean that you have the proven track record of all of your clients or most of your clients being successful, right? Being a fiduciary really just means you can't tell people certain things. It means you're not allowed to do certain things. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to put people in, some piss poor investments, honestly.
Right.
And so I always say, and I heard this first from a really, really great financial advisor who we work with here at Sinasco Law. He said, number one thing about me, he's like, I'm a fiduciary and I want you to ignore that. The number one thing about me is none of my clients have ever outlived any of their money. He's like, all of my clients I have as close to 100% satisfaction rate, because I'm not doing anything for them that I wouldn't do for myself.
Yeah, which is huge. That's exactly what, anyone can, like you were saying, anyone can say, oh, I have your best interest at heart, but do you?
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I'm just going to give him a little shout out right here. Shout out to Craig Myers. He's literally the best financial advisor in the world. And it's because he really recognizes that as you get older, you don't need less money as you get older. You need more money as you get older. And you need a bigger kitty than you would expect. And so instead of just asking, the general questions of, oh, do you want to protect your assets? Oh, do you have a family history of needing care, of getting sick, of getting hurt? He's asking a lot deeper questions. What do you want your life to look like?
Right.
What do you plan on traveling? If you do, what kind of traveling? Are you trying to go to Florida or are you trying to go to Spain? Right? What kind of car do you drive? Is it something that, you expect to keep for the next 20 years, or are you looking to get, a different kind of vehicle? When you find an advisor who has a proven track record and who's willing to look at your situation holistically, instead of just how much money can I get under management right now, you're going to be in a way better position. because that's the guy who's saying, all right, I want to protect your assets from inflation. I want to protect your assets from the stock market. I want to protect your assets from greedy kids. I want to help protect your assets from the rising cost of nursing home care. Right? He's helping to put together a team so that, he's watching out over everything. He's making sure everything is fine. But he also knows what to look for. So he has the ability to say, hey, I see you're drawing out more money, this month than you have in years past. What's going on? Is everything okay? Right. Do you need extra help? Do you need extra assistance? Do we need to change anything? Or, are you in a position where you need to go see a lawyer or you need to go see, some other kind of expert? And just the ability of, again, looking at things holistically, it's huge. It's huge, huge, huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know we covered so much on this, and I could talk to you for hours, I think, about all of these things. But to kind of wrap things up, what would your 2 cents be on this whole topic of inflation?
So my 2 cents are, number one, be smart about buying things, all right? And I need to follow this own advice more, right?
Me too.
This probably isn't the time for you to redecorate your house. This probably isn't the time to put in a pool or take a trip to Italy, but it could be. If you took the steps to make sure that that is in your plan, you absolutely can still do those things. The only thing that I really want to caution everyone on is credit card debt is literally the Black Plague. It is the number one killer of financial futures, if I'm being completely honest. And so don't be putting unnecessary things on credit cards, right? If you're one of those people where you have to choose between eating dinner and putting it on a credit card or not eating, absolutely, I'm going to say buy groceries and put it on a credit card, right?
Right.
But if you're someone who has other options, do not do it. You should never be running a balance on your credit card into the next month, right?
Right.
And the last thing is make a plan. Financial success never happens on accident. I have never run into an accidental millionaire unless they got it in, some kind of big settlement, right?
Right.
It takes hard work, it takes planning, and it takes budgeting, right? And so just know that if you have the dedication to stick to your budget and to stick to this plan, you do get the ability to say later on, well, now I have money for fun stuff. Now I have money for things that I want to do. And so just be careful and be really careful when it comes to paying off debt, right? If you have $30,000 on your mortgage and your mortgage is at a fixed 3% interest rate and you have $30,000 on a credit card and that credit card has compounding interest and a variable interest rate, pay off that credit card first, right? Obviously keep paying your mortgage, pay whatever you have to pay on it, but your number one priority is that credit card, all right? The compounding interest on that is going to kill you. And since most credit cards have some variable interest rates, today it might only be 9% and you can live with that, but tomorrow it's going to be 45% and it probably won't go down. And so credit cards, they're a great tool if you know how to use them right. Again, it is literally the Black Plague of financial futures, credit card debt. And so try to avoid it as much as you can. But also remember that, times are tough. Times are really tough, and you just got to do what you need to do to get through it.
Yeah. It's not forever, hopefully.
Yeah, it's not forever. It's not forever. And if you're one of those people where you're like, listen, I have absolutely no option but to put all of this on a credit card, it's the only way I'll be able to feed my kids, right?
Right.
Once we get through this, then we can look at debt consolidation. We can look at negotiating that debt down, all right? If you're someone who's already in an insane amount of credit card debt, go see a lawyer, right? I usually send people to Fab Gross law offices. They're the best. They're also our friends, so it helps. They're the debt guys. And so don't be afraid to talk to a professional if you're in debt, because usually there are some things you can do to help yourself. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to look for a second opinion. And don't be afraid to go in for a free 1-hour consultation with a lawyer, because usually they're going to tell you things that could really, really help you.
Yeah. That is so helpful to know, because I really do think another big piece of it is like shame. Like people are so afraid to, well, for one, people I don't think talk about finances enough because for some reason it's this like taboo topic, which really I think is hurting us probably more than it's helping us.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you don't need to tell everyone like, here's my, I'm X amount of dollars in debt and blah, blah, blah. But I think it shouldn't be so far on the other spectrum of things where you can't go ask for help if you need it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or that you feel ashamed or something like that.
It's not a dirty word, right? It's a fact of life. It is what it is. And like most situations, you know, you feel so stuck because you don't know that there are other options out there. But with things like the Fair Debt Collection Act, there are laws out there that are designed to help you. And so this is what I'll say, you know, with an area like debt, if it's an area so large that there are specialized lawyers out there who are able to help you, there's probably a lot you can, you're not the only one, and you can probably get yourself in a way better situation if you reach out. Because why would there be so many of them if they weren't successful at what they do, right? You're not the first person to be in credit card debt, and I guarantee you, you will not be the last.
Right.
All right? You're in a club where there are resources available. There are people out there who want to help you. And honestly, if you start talking about it, you're probably going to find that some of your friends and some of your family members have been in a pretty similar situation.
Right.
And so don't be afraid to reach out to professionals. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help because, again, a lot of law firms will do a free 1-hour consultation. Don't be afraid to use it.
Absolutely. Kelsey, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me today. This is so fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. I loved getting to do it.
Yes, absolutely. Where can people find more about you and Samasco Law?
So you can find more about us on samascolaw.com, our website, or on social media. You can look at us on Samasco Law on Facebook, Instagram, or we also have some personal lawyer pages that we're always posting content about estate planning, Medicaid planning, wealth preservation, and we will do some videos on debt and things like that. And so, you know, if anyone needs any help, definitely don't be afraid to reach out. You can reach us at 586-468-6793.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelsey. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys, that'll do it for this edition. Sources used in this episode will be linked in the description, along with a link to Samasco Law, where you can learn more about Kelsey and the firm. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll meet you back here next week.